I am so happy to be here today. Now, normally, because I'm a religious, kind of spiritual kind of guy, I like to start things off with just a little small prayer, if you don't mind. So, work with me on that. Well, Heavenly Father, please, let me outlive my money. That's it. That's all I want. All I want to do is outlive my money. You see, many times when I meet someone who's interested in saving and investing, they come to me and they ask the question, why should I be interested in saving and investing at my age? I ask them to close their eyes and just imagine this. Old, sick, broke. Not a very pretty picture, is it? And unfortunately today, that is a great worry of far too many Americans. Now, I wrote a book called Investing in the Dream. And in writing that book, one of the things that I did in terms of my research was to investigate the whole question of how age 65 got to be the kind of watchword age for people who are interested in retirement. Let me ask you, do you have any idea why 65 was selected for the age of retirement? Do you? Do you? Well, let me tell you how it happened. Back in the 1920s and 30s, the United States Congress got together and decided we were going to have a social welfare system here in this country and call it Social Security. And you know how they do in Washington. You know, they had meetings after meetings after meetings. It took about 6 months. They had banquets. They had receptions. They did all the things that they normally do in Washington. Finally, the chairman one day, after about 6 or 7 months, decided to call in an actuary. Now, you know what an actuary is. An actuary is that kind of person that works for an insurance company that determines your life expectancy, your mortality age, so that an insurance company can then know what kind of premium to charge you, right? Well, this chairman of this committee asked this actuary, what is the, mortality age of the average American? Well, mind you now, this committee has been operating for about 9 months. The actuary went away, took about 15 minutes, came back and said, Mr. Chairman, the average mortality age of an American is age 62. Chairman said, great, 65. That's where we're going to hand out Social Security checks. That's right. They never intended on any of us living long enough to get a Social Security check. And so now, guess what? Medical science has played a dirty old trick on that chairman of that committee, because now we're living longer and longer than ever before. 65, 75, 85 is really the average age of mortality these days. And guess what? You almost have to beg the doctor to die. You know, they got a pill for this and a pill for that, a tube, an injection, I mean, really, you're going to live a lot longer now than you ever thought you were going to live. So if you're making some plans on retiring at age 65 and having enough money to last you until you actually, pass on, guess what? You may not have enough money. That's the reason why I wrote my book, Investing in the Dream. That's why I think it's so very important that we understand the importance of saving and investing. You see, to me, the American dream is simply this: the ability to get a good education, the ability to work hard, and the ability to retire comfortably. Unfortunately, that whole business about retiring comfortably is becoming harder and harder to do. Matter of fact, we did a survey among some of my clients, and we discovered that many of our younger clients thought that the chances of them seeing an unidentified flying object was far greater than they would be able to see a Social Security check. I mean, it's just the Social Security system that is being talked about so much these days. People are just afraid that they just can't depend on Social Security for a retirement. And that's another reason why people are now saving and investing at a rapid, very rapid rate. But even with that, I still find people who just don't understand the importance of saving and investing. One of those people I kind of chronicle in my book, Investing in the Dream, and the reason why he kind of comes to mind is that he was a very good friend of mine. You see, I used to work at the post office. Now, I got to tell you, working at the post office is a really kind of a special sort of thing. There was a time in our culture where working at the post office was a pretty good job. Matter of fact, it's probably the only really good government job that you could get at one point. And so I had an opportunity to work at the post office, and I worked for a very nice guy named Marty Sims. And I recall Marty because he was the first African-American postmaster of Washington, D.C. And I was his assistant, and he was just loved by by the whole postal family. You have to understand, when you work for the post office, it really is a postal family. So when he got ready to retire, they invited him, his workers invited him to the registry cage. Now, the registry cage is kind of a special place. Not everybody can get in there. It's all under lock and key. But they do that so they can bring in their cakes and pies from home whenever they want to have a retirement party. And they had a great party for Marty. And Marty came to the party, and he was just so delighted to be there. Matter of fact, he was kind of moved. And, he said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming to my retirement party. I just don't really know how to express my appreciation. I am going to do the postal thing. So he reached in his pocket. No, he wasn't going to shoot anybody. He reached in his pocket, and he got out an envelope and a card. And he said, I'm going to send each one of you a Christmas card every year and tell you how I'm doing. He was a young man. And this was back in 1976. Now remember, in 1976, that was the year of the bicentennial. We had those beautiful postage stamps. I remember that because just a year before, I started collecting stamps. My first stamp that I collected was the love stamp. Remember that one? That was that LOVE stamp, the Terms of Endearment, Alan McGraw or something. I can't remember exactly who it was, but it was just a beautiful stamp, and it sold out. It was an 11-cent stamp, okay? When Marty retired, it was in the summer of 1976, okay? The postage stamp was 13 cents. Then I knew I had the wrong hobby. The year before, it was 11 cents. It became 13 cents. Well, anyway, I remember the 13-cent stamp. So, for the 100 people there, he had committed to spend $13 out of his $759 a month retirement check to send everyone in the audience a card. Okay? Well, I saw Marty not too long ago. It was Christmas before last. And I said, Marty, how you doing? Great. Still living. Everybody's doing well. Got your Christmas card? But Marty, that $13 that you had committed to sending us the card, 13 cents, $100, $13, that was now 32 cents. That's a $32 commitment. And your pension, still $7.59? Oh, by the way, Marty, stamps going up in January to 33 cents. So next year you're going to have a $33 commitment. And this is America, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be 50 cents sooner or later. In other words, even if you do nothing, inflation will put you in a situation where you're going to have your money grow. And that's why it's so important that we learn to save and invest. When we first began our careers, do we have any idea that gasoline would be $2 a gallon? What is it going to be 5, 10, 15 years from now? It is so important that we learn to save and invest. That's why I wrote the book, Investing in the Dream. Because our dream is what? To retire comfortably. No one wants to work. What do you do when you go on vacation? You ever take a vacation? What do you do when you go on vacation? You say, call it, beach boy, and you say, give me one of them blue drinks with the umbrella in it. You don't drink that stuff at home. But on vacation, what do? You spend money, right? That's what's going to happen when you retire. You're going to have more time to do what? To spend money, right? Maybe the best thing for you is to keep on working because you can save more money. But I mean, really, it's so important that we have money. Now, I have occasion to talk to a lot of churches. And, church people are very interesting folks. When you go to them and you start talking to them about money, the first thing they say is, look, Brother Brown, let me explain something to you. Money is the root of all evil. I don't want to be associated with it. I don't want a lot of money. All I want to do is to live comfortably. And I said, sister, no matter what your situation is, money makes it a whole lot better. And you know something? I'm not really sure God put all of this good stuff in this earth for us not to use it. I mean, why did he create all these wonderful gadgets and things and furs and cars and stuff? I mean, it's for man's use. And so our job is to be good stewards of our money. Many times when I'm thinking about that, especially in religious situations, and I'm very respectful of this because I look at the parable of the talents. Remember that one? That's in Matthew 25, where God gave a certain person, 5 talents, and he multiplied them, and made 10 talents out of them. And he said, well done, my good and faithful servant. Gave another one 3, and he multiplied it and made 6. He said, you will sit at my right hand in heaven. Then the other person, he gave 1. And what did he do with that one? Recall? He buried it. He did nothing with it. What did God do? He took it away from him, said, you foolish person, I've given you a talent, I've given you money, I've given you prosperity, I've given you an opportunity, and what have you done with it? Nothing. I'm going to take that away from you and give it to someone who knows what they're doing. That's the way I think I feel like this is a mission, because we as Americans have been given a tremendous blessing. Look at history. Look at the countries around the world. A lot of people say, wait a minute, is this thing wrong with America, that thing wrong with America, this, that, and the other. Let me tell you something. If you don't like it, leave. Of course, now you may have a kind of a tough time leaving, because as you're going out the door, there's 10 people trying to get in the door. But you have to understand that we have a great opportunity here in this country. We have great prosperity in this country. And the truth of the matter is, if we go back to our parents, our grandparents, their parents, wherever they came from, all right, and saw how they were able to struggle and make ends meet, put us through school, put us in a position where we could get good jobs, and guess what? We have no money. I think it's shame on us. That's why it's extremely important that we learn how to invest in our dreams. Now, fortunately, back in 1976, we were given a tremendous blessing in this country, and that was the Tax Reform Act of 1976. Part of that act of 1976 was the invention of the Individual Retirement Account, the IRA, not the Irish Republican Army, the Individual Retirement Account. Part of that section of the IRS code, Section 4, was a section called 401k. Now, everybody kind of heard about this 401k, but people don't really understand what that means. Well, let me tell you, the 401k is a marvelous thing. What it allows you to do is to take a portion of your investment, that is to say, a portion of your paycheck, and actually put it into an investment and not have to pay any taxes on it until you take the money out. Now, let me tell you, that is a good thing because, well, I don't know about you, but money has a way of kind of like floating out of my hand once it gets there. So the fact that I can start saving before I actually get my check, that's a great thing. So now employers can take a portion of your check, take it out and invest it, and not give it to you until it's time for you to retire. And the government did another great thing. They made it a penalty for you to take the money out early. So if you take the money out before age 59 and a half, there's a 10% penalty, and you have to pay the ordinary income tax. But let me tell you, that is a good thing, because then that'll encourage you to actually save the money. Well, to make a long story short, what I tell people more often than not is that if you have a 401k at your place of employment, run. Don't walk to your Human Resources Department and actually get into that program. Because take a young person like you, 25 years old. If you would simply put away $50 a month and a savings plan, up until that magic age of 65, you would have put away $24,000. That ain't bad right there. Put it in the local bank at 4 or 5%, get about $55,000 out of it, $56,000. To put it into a mutual fund that pays about 12% average rate of return over that period of time, you'd have over $600,000. So we edge that up instead of $50 a month to $100 a month. Okay? $5 a day. One Big Mac Happy Meal. Okay? Guess what? That $100 turns into $48,000, and put it into a mutual fund paying around 12%, you have over $1.2 million. That's why it's so important that we learn the importance to invest in our dreams, to invest in our futures, and to prepare for retirement. Thank you very much for coming out today. I hope you've gotten something out of this. Investing in the Dream is my book, and I'm so happy that I've had an opportunity to tell you about it. Thank you.
Money is what we work for and what we need to live a comfortable life. But not all of us see money in the same way. So where do we get these attitudes about money? Do our racial and ethnic backgrounds affect the way we look at money?
Since ethnic background affects our life experiences, it's hard to say that it does not affect how we spend and what we think about spending and saving.
Let's look at the numbers. According to a recent study, Black and Hispanic consumers spend a higher percentage of their income on housing, food, and clothes than white. Yet white consumers spent a higher portion of their income on health care and entertainment.
African American families tend to be younger and more likely to have children at home, so they will spend more on apparel, on footwear, the kinds of things that you would spend when you have young children at home.
In 1998, blacks spent half or less of what whites spent buying alcoholic beverages, reading materials, small appliances, and gifts. They also spent less on buying vehicles, televisions, radios, and sound equipment.
I think there is a stereotype that African Americans spend much of their money on clothes, material things, rings, jewelry, cars, that kind of thing, when in fact, according to a study that came out about 6 or 7 months ago, it found that African Americans spend a lot of their disposable income helping others.
It's not just spending, there are also differences in the way we save our money.
African Americans do think about money differently. They don't have as long as a tradition in investing, in perhaps saving money at the rate of white Americans.
Although more African Americans are investing today, they haven't caught up. Only 64% of them are investing in the stock market, and this compares to 82% of their white counterparts. Welcome to MoneyWise. Joining us this week are Charles Gonzalez, a financial planner and the author of Yes You Can, Si Se Puede, Every Latino's Guide to Building Family Wealth, and Jesse Brown, also a financial planner and author of Investing in the Dream, Personal Wealth Building Strategies for African Americans in Search of Financial Freedom. Won't both of you tell me, does race really affect the way people manage their money, Charles?
Well, I believe, with respect to the Hispanic or Latino community, that it has a great influence on the reality of their ability to do that today. History, culture, but mainly the gap in information and knowledge as a result of history and cultural influences has impacted Latinos' ability and use, for example, of investment products, which we know so many people are using nowadays.
I agree. It's a matter of knowledge and trust. Unfortunately, that whole business about knowledge, the financial service community has got to take part of the blame. You see, for far too long, the financial service community has ignored the African American and Latino community, thinking of the old adage that all poor people are black and all black people are poor. Well, that's not true at all. But now the financial service community are seeking out funds from the minority communities, and I think that it's now up to the minority communities themselves to gain that knowledge by purchasing our book and going online and reading magazines and all the things that are now available. Of course, there's always that elusive business about trust as well. Many people say that, why should I give my money to that system that has been on us for so long. But you know, we got to get over that, because the financial service community, to me, is the road and the channel to success in today's market.
I think Charles want to get in.
Again, the whole issue of information and the responsibility of our own communities to take the lead on this is very, very important. For example, in the Latino community, the Spanish-speaking audience especially has very little access to this type of information. It's hard to build trust if you don't even have the information. The Spanish-language television stations, for example, develop most of their ratings and their money from the telenovelas, which are Spanish soap operas that they import from Latin America. There are no equivalents of CNBC or this show, for example, targeting Spanish speakers. So I think there's a real need, and I'm working with some in Spanish media and try to get more books. I mean, Jesse just told me he wants to get his book in Spanish to follow on mine, which is the only book in Spanish today, which is ridiculous.
So let's talk about that, because there's some people would even question why there's a need for both of your books. I mean, target to
I got that a
specific
lot,
areas.
that's for sure.
So how did you respond to that response?
Well, I responded to the fact by saying that the Latino community, which is the fastest growing community in the United States, is going to be the driving force of much of the economic vitality of this country in the 21st century, as we go from 12-13% to 20-25% of the population. America as a whole depends on the success of that community. They need to be financially empowered, have the information to make these sound decisions.
Jesse, how do you respond to this?
Well, you know, niche marketing has always been the way to do business in America. So the fact that we have addressed our business towards African Americans or Latinos should not be considered strange in any way. Matter of fact, what we're doing is we're enhancing the marketplace, and many major financial service firms understand that very clearly.
But see, now, Jesse, some people would question, is this a clever marketing tool, or does both of your constituents really need this information packaged in a certain way?
Well, I think they do, because, you know, money is very personal. Right. You know, it's probably one of the most personal things that you can kind of come up with. And when you think of that, people want a relationship with their financial advisor, with their financial institution. They want to know where their money is going and what their money is doing. And on top of that, they need growth. Unfortunately, everyone knows someone, if not themselves, who has somehow put away money into a coffee can or buried it in their backyard, or saving it for a rainy day, I guess is the old expression. But too many people don't understand the importance of inflation on that particular amount of money.
Absolutely. For example, in my own clientele and working with Hispanics of all types, whether they're recent immigrants or second and third generation, I've seen many of my clients very successful putting most of their assets, for example, into real estate, which is a traditional road or strategy pursued by immigrants. For example, it's real property. There's safety there. But clearly we understand that the markets today are beyond our control, and we need to have a little more diversification. Of course, the real estate market isn't growing as fast as, for example, the equity market.
I've got a client right now, a lady who's 65 years old. She'd worked all her life, paid off her house, and she wanted to get $5,000 off of that house to send her daughter, her granddaughter rather, to college. She went to the banker. You know what the banker said? The banker says, well, ma'am, if you could just kind of like tell me where you work and we can check your credit report. She said, look, I'm retired. I don't have a job. I don't have any credit. He said, look, we don't care about your house. We care about your credit ability, your ability to repay. So since we can't see that, we're not going to give you the money.
Or worse, because now there's a product called reverse mortgages, which are targeting these very people because they don't qualify for a mortgage. But now what you're doing is sucking the equity out of these houses that and then impact the ability to pass that property on to their family.
But I think we don't want our audience to miss the point. Basically, both African Americans and Hispanics have been using real estate because it's something they're used to.
Absolutely.
Something that they believe in. It's been taught to them culturally. You want to own land.
And that's why it's so important that people understand the equity marketplace. That's why I talk about mutual funds so much, because you need diversification and professional management to provide wealth.
But we're going to come back later and talk about the stock market and get some other suggestions for our audience. But right now, let's take a look at two families and find out how their view of money has been impacted by their culture.
You should get on Buffy set. You should play against us, okay?
I come from a Mexican background. Both my parents are born in Mexico. I grew up in Los Angeles, California. My mother spoke only Spanish to us at home.
Shoot something in the air like this.
My husband's family is originally from El Salvador, and he grew up part-time in El Salvador and most of his life here in the States.
When Rosa Flores' family came to the United States, they brought their own unique attitudes about money.
Primarily, I think in our culture, we do tend to look at it in terms of not only money for supporting ourselves, but supporting our families.
Rosa's family also saw money as one way to make a better life, an attitude Rosa inherited.
We didn't have a lot of money around, so I knew that it meant to get money, I had to work to get it.
Like Rosa's, Emily Chu's family came to the U.S. with their own attitudes about money.
My parents are from Taiwan, but my husband's parents are originally from China.
When we were young, my parents always taught us that, always save money, don't be wasteful, saving money for rainy days.
The way that my parents raised us is that when we have something extra, we always put it in the bank.
Traditionally, Chinese don't like to invest money in stock or mutual funds.
And also we know that some Asians will buy houses so that when it becomes time to send their kids to college, they can sell those houses and pay for the college tuition.
Right.
The main thing is, we know that the money is hard-earned, it's hard-won, and so you don't want to just squander it away, because it's very easy to do in this country.
Smile.
We're trying very hard to teach our children about our ethnic background. We're making sure that they're exposed to the language, the culture, the people, with everything we're involved in, from dance classes that my daughter takes, Mexican dance classes, to Spanish school where we take both of our children. So they're very exposed to it, even though they're not growing up the way we did in a very ethnic environment.
I tried it. My family is unique in the way that we sort of carry the tradition of having the three generations living together under one roof. Because you see that a lot in the olden days, and also maybe in Taiwan or China, where you have the grandparents and then the parents and then the kids all living together. And right now, because I have a little baby, my parents have moved in with us to help out with the child care. And I think that it's of primary importance that I teach her about her culture and her background.
There's several Chinese schools in Virginia, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the Chinese culture, the heritage, is a wonderful heritage, and she should be proud of that, and she should never forget that.
Charles, what can we learn from these families?
Great stories, both of them, and very similar in many respects. The Hispanic woman was fascinating. I had so many clients just like that. The word risk really permeates the discussion here, and avoidance of risk. And it's a classic response to immigration. I mean, what do immigrants do? They leave everything behind. They come here with nothing to start afresh. And clearly they're just getting by, and it's all about survival and putting food on the table and caring for your kids to have a better life.
But therein lies the dilemma, the savings dilemma, because they realize that it's very expensive, and it's very important to get ahead of inflation. That's why I think that the stories of the Hispanic lady and the Asian couple, that it's so important that they now understand that it is important to save but also invest.
But Jesse, you mentioned a couple times inflation. And some people say that inflation is under control now. Why do you bring up inflation?
Well, inflation is never under control. I recall a client that I have, his name is Marty Sims, and what he discovered when he retired from the post office, which, by the way, was a pretty good job for African Americans not too long ago.
Still is.
Still is. And as such, he retired back in 1976, and he promised 100 of his coworkers at his retirement party that he would do what? He would do the postal thing. No, he wasn't going to shoot anybody. He was going to give them a Christmas card each and every Christmas. Back there in 1976, the postal card cost 13 cents. So he committed $13 out of his $790 monthly retirement check to send out these cards. Well, I saw him not too long ago, and by the way, the card costs 33 cents now, and I understand it's going up to 34, maybe even 50 cents sometime soon. So he's now committed almost $35 out of that. And so it's just a short period of time. Things seem to just get more and more expensive.
Let's bring this home to our people. First, let's talk about attitude, because this also came up. I know in your book you talk a lot about attitude. How important is attitude as it relates to building wealth, especially for people of color?
I think you have to have the right attitude, and in fact my book, I positioned it as an attitude check for Latinos to change the way they think about money from hoarding it, saving it, managing it at the minimal amount of risk to growing and creating true wealth that will last and not only allow them to live their lives the way they want to, but also to pass on to the next generation, which is a major goal that I have within the Latino community. There's this, everyone talks about this massive transfer of wealth from the World War II generation to the baby boomers. I know that minority communities are not participating to the extent that they represent population. We need to grow wealth, and the only way to do that is accelerate the creation of wealth. You can't do that earning 3% in a money market or
give some specific recommendation of how people can adjust their attitude so they can be ready to enjoy more economic success.
Well, the first thing is understand this word risk. Jesse was just talking about it in terms of inflation. That's a very graphic reminder, example that many people can focus on. But even at 3% inflation over 25 years, you lose 40%, 50% of your purchasing power. So there's the risk of losing in the short run versus the risk of absolutely knowing you're not going to have enough money 20 years from now. And as Latinos are younger, their income, their wealth is more exposed. So that's what I do to try to make it real for them, is compare their situation at 30 with their parent situation at 55 and try to make it come alive for them and say, you know, what's the greater pain?
But is assuming just more risk on your investment going to be enough?
No, I mean, they have to be clear on what their true goals and objectives are and think intelligently and have a written plan for that and understand what are the different aspects of their wealth that they need to address.
You know, that's an important point about goals, because too many times people just don't have goals in front of them. And as I often say, more people spend more time planning their summer vacation than they do their financial future. And that's what I try to address in my book and my speeches and lectures, because what people have to put in front of them is exactly what the future has to hold for them. Now, the Hispanic lady and the Asian couple talked about multi-generations within the same household. Well, let me just tell you something. That is going by the wayside. There was a time when Sissy would leave her good job up in Detroit and go back down south and take care of Mama. Well, that doesn't happen very often anymore. More often than not, when the generations disperse, they don't return home to take care of their elders. And that's why it's extremely important that people look at not only saving and investing, but other key issues such as insurance, long-term care, disability insurance, and actually prepare for the future.
So it is more than just risk in investing, as Jesse said. It's looking at all the things that impact our ability not only to create, but to protect and preserve our wealth, because it has to last for a long time.
Look, you have to understand this. No matter what your situation is, money makes it a whole lot better. Of course. So whether you figure that education is a critical element, or health care, or whatever the issue is, money is the common denominator. And that's why investing and saving and actually participating in the American economic system is so critical.
Give me 2 or 3 steps that people watching the show should take. Charles?
Well, let me just say this first. You have to make yourself your number one priority. If you don't make yourself your number one priority, and you end up paying the doctor bill and the utility bill and the house note and not focusing on the importance of developing a savings program for yourself. Now, clearly I believe in tithing, but right after that, you've got to set aside a certain nest egg for yourself. Then I think you've got to systematically invest. You have to do it on a regular, routine basis. There's no lotto in life. You have to actually, to become a millionaire, you have to start out by investing on a regular, routine basis at a very young age.
So if you have a written set of goals, you're going to focus and stay committed on those goals, so you will pay yourself first. So first, what are your goals? And sometimes you need to find a professional to help you understand what they should be and prioritize them. So number one, think about what money means to you and focus on your goals. Then start paying yourself first and taking a look at how you can increase the efficiency of the money that you're making.
I want to thank both of you as always. You're entertaining and informative, and I know you'll be back.
Kelvin, thanks very much.
Thank you.